Hi, my name is Paige. Welcome to my channel. I know my lighting's a little bit odd today, but there is a huge storm coming and I can see it right now and it looks gorgeous and I just kind of want to soak up those vibes. So I figured like a moodier lighting situation would work. So you're gonna see lots of shadows and I'm sorry about that if that bothers you, but I thought today we could talk about some of my favorite books over the past few years. So everything that I have given 5 stars, and I kind of wanted to reevaluate some of those books, see if I think that I would still give them 5 stars, and kind of see if the books that I've given 5 stars in the past kind of reflect who I am as a reader. So I'm just gonna go through all of the books that I have given 5 stars and talk about them. If that sounds interesting, then keep on watching. I decided to throw together a few stats just to show how my 5-star ratings have evolved. So in 2020, I had just gotten back into reading. I had only been reading fan fiction and like college textbooks for years. It was like 6 to 7 years at that point. And so in 2020, I ended up giving 32 5 stars. And I truly believe that was just me being so excited to be reading again and finding so many books and like rediscovering the things that I like. And I was just handing them out like candy, that is for sure. But I dropped that number down to 17 5-star reads in 2021. And so far in 2022, I have only given 4 5-star reads. Part of me thinks that I'm being a little bit more pessimistic when I'm reading, but I also really think that I have found the types of books that I like. I found the writing style that I enjoy, the type of characters and character interactions that I really enjoy the most. So I am being more cautious with the 5 stars that I'm handing out, just because I want a book to have 5 stars when it really truly means something to me, and I feel like it would be a book that I would want to come back to over and over and over again. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy and love 4-star or 3-star reads, but a 5-star is just something magical to me, and I'm trying to be more selective in what I believe is magical when I'm handing out these star ratings. So I do kind of think that my system now on how I give 5 stars mainly goes off of vibes. So when I get to the end of the book, I kind of just feel if it would be a 5-star. I get to the end and I go, I love that so much, and that ends up being a 5-star most of the time. That is like the number one reason I would give something a 5-star. Another reason would be if I am like emotionally invested in the characters or their relationships with others. So even if I don't love the character myself, I love how they interact with other characters. And another reason I love 5 stars is if the writing style was new or enjoyable or just easily accessible, where it wasn't something that I felt like I was doing a lot of work. I do not like books that make me feel like my brain is working overtime or that I can't fully grasp what I'm reading, and that is a personal preference. I do not like more lyrical or flowery writing. So writing style is a big reason why I would not give something a 5-star, just because sometimes I struggle with comprehension. It does hinder my enjoyment a lot of the time. But those would be the main reasons why I give something a 5-star. So now let's talk about the books that I have given 5 stars. I've kind of broken all of the books into categories, and we'll go by category and let you know. So the first category is ebooks, and these are just kind of all over the place with their actual genres and their formats, but I don't have them here, so I'm just going to easily pop them all up in this section. But the first ebook that I gave a 5-star to in July of 2022 is New Kid, and I just enjoyed this one overall because it was about a kid and his experience in school. And I used to be a teacher. I taught for 5 years, and I enjoy seeing kids who have a positive experience in school. I know not every kid does, but it was something that I strive to give my students. So I enjoy seeing that in a book, and I enjoy seeing student friendships. But would I give this book a 5-star now? No. I don't remember nearly anything about this book. I don't even think I could tell you the main character's name. I did really like the writing style, and I thought it was really cute and funny, but I handed this one off to my younger cousin. I don't even know if she's finished reading it, but I don't believe that this one would still be a 5-star, but at the time I really did enjoy reading it. The next ebook was Top Secret. I believe this is by Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen, and I gave that 5-star in September of 2021, and I love this book. If I am remembering correctly, it's like a fraternity house romance, like a little bit secretive, enemies to lovers, and I just had a really fun time with these characters. But would I give it 5 stars? I don't think so, because again, I do not remember very much about it. I just remember the dynamic between the characters was really enjoyable. I do think that there was some cheating in it though, which I think if I would go back and read it again would drop down its rating. And I have noticed with some of Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen's writing that it tends to repeat similar pattern if there is a sport involved where the male characters don't believe that they can come out because of bullying and other things that happen within their team, like a lot of slurs and whatnot. And it could be true to sports, but I do not watch sports. I have never really played sports, so it just kind of ends up being the same trope over and over again. So because of that, I do not think I would give it a 5-star, but I did really enjoy it. The next two ebooks, I believe, are by the same people. It's Him and Us, and I would absolutely give these 5 stars. This is a sports romance, so it does follow the same tropes, but I was emotionally invested in these two characters. It is a hockey romance, childhood friends to lovers, and that gets me. Childhood friends to lovers, I am a sucker for. So basically, if it has that trope and I enjoy the characters and I'm emotionally attached to the point that I cried during, I think, both books, yeah, it's gonna get a 5 stars. I almost went down like a whirlwind of hockey romances, but I did not. I refrained. And yes, I would absolutely give this 5 stars. I feel like this is exactly the type of contemporary romance that I look for. And the last ebook that I gave 5 stars is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. I just read this recently and I really did enjoy this one. This is like a therapist memoir where she recounts stories of her times with her clients, I think that's the word I'm looking for, as well as her time in therapy and what she learned from all of the experiences. And I also was very emotionally attached to a couple storylines in it, and it just felt very real to hear about a therapist who also has to seek therapy and the reasons why and the fears that she has that all of us have too. And it made me want to start to look for therapy options for myself. But yeah, I don't usually rate nonfiction, or I sometimes do and I sometimes don't. But when they really stick out to me and I really feel an emotional pull from them, then I will give something 5 stars usually. And because it's somebody else's own story, I feel like I'm not going to give it 4 stars or 3 stars, so it ends up being a 5-star read. So yeah, I think if I read this again, I would give it a 5 star. It's one that I want other people to read and just hear the stories that are involved in it. So yeah, I did really enjoy that one. The next category is nonfiction, and I only have 2 books in this because I don't really like to rate nonfiction, like I said, but these ones were stories that I just felt like deserved 5 stars. And the first one is Night by Elie Wiesel, and if you don't know what this one's about, it's about the Holocaust and his account of what happened in Auschwitz, and it's heartbreaking and it's not easy to read, but it's just one of those stories that once you do read it, it stays with you, it lingers with you. So of course it's a 5-star read. Would I give it 5 stars again? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a moving story, but it's gut-wrenching. Then we have Becoming by Michelle Obama. I read this over the course of a few months and I listened to the audiobook, which you have to do when you read this book because her voice and just the way she reads it is so incredible. This is just following her entire life's journey and how she became the first lady, and it's just so good. There are so many heartbreaking points and it's just, I don't know, it's so powerful. I just cried throughout this one because of the way she told this story. So again, I don't love giving memoirs 5 stars, but this is definitely one that earns 5 stars. The next category is graphic novels, and first up we have Heartstopper. I have not read book 4 yet, but I did read book 1, 2, and 3, I believe, in 2020 and in 2021. I was supposed to read it in 2022, I just ended up not reading it right before the show released and just ended up watching the show without rereading. But if you haven't heard of this series, Where Have You Been? It's also a Netflix show. It's just about 2 boys in high school and it's very, very cute. But would I give this series 5 stars again? Honestly, no. Honestly, no. It's cute, and I think I just fell into the hype around this series and how much everyone loved it. But book Nick and Charlie are not my favorite. Movie Nick and Charlie, for whatever reason, I adore. But book Nick and Charlie just felt a little surface level, and I know it's a graphic novel, so you don't get as much time with them and as much development, so I feel like this is a bad take on it, but I just didn't enjoy them as much together, and I felt like Charlie was very dramatic in the books. And in the TV series, for whatever reason, everything played out better, in my opinion. Everything made more sense, and the world that they created in that TV series was sweeter, and it was funnier, and it felt very true to the books, but still enhanced everything that I didn't enjoy in the books as much. So I will be honest and say that I gave these books 5 stars just because I didn't want people to be sad with me that I didn't give them 5 stars. But I think that they are all 4-star reads, just not 5 stars. They're so cute though, and the TV series is amazing. But yeah, I don't think I'd give these 5 stars again. Next up, we have A Quiet Girl in a Noisy World. It's an introvert story, and it's by Debbie Tung, and this was so good. This is everything it is like to be an introvert, and I kept reading it going, yeah, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, I do that too. Oh yeah, that's me. So yes, I would give this 5 stars because I think this just like perfectly emulates me as an introvert and all of my experiences ever that I've ever had. You know, where people are like, have I ever had an original thought? Yeah, this is me when it comes to this book. Next up, we have When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria Jameson and Omar Mohammed. This is a graphic novel about a young boy who is an orphan in Kenya, and he has a younger brother with various medical needs. He's nonverbal and needs a lot of care, and it's just about Omar's struggle in trying to take care of his brother, but also wanting to have the opportunity of going to school and gaining a better life for them. And it's just very heartbreaking, and it's moving, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful story. So I would absolutely give this one 5 stars. I've even recommended it to teacher friends, and they've read it and cried their way through it. It's a good one. This is absolutely a 5-star read. Moving on to middle grade, I have 2 5-star reads from the Percy Jackson series. My first 5-star read is book 2, Sea of Monsters, which is the most unpopular opinion to ever exist, ever. Everyone hates book 2, but I absolutely loved it. I think I had a hard time getting into the Greek mythology of Percy Jackson book 1 because I had never been a Percy Jackson fan when I was younger. I had never read it until I was 25, 26, and so I didn't know anything about the world. I also was not into Greek mythology growing up as well. There were not a lot of books that we had to read throughout my schooling that had to do with Greek mythology, and if we did do it, it was like a week's worth of stuff, so I didn't know much going on in that first book. But by the time we got to book 2, I felt like I was really in the world. There's a character in this book, I cannot remember his name right now. Is it Tyson? I think it's Tyson, and I adored him so much. So this book was the most fun, and I also gave book 5 5 stars because it was just a really great ending to this series, and I really felt for these characters by the end. So yeah, book 2 and book 5 were the only 5-star reads for me. But would I give them again? You know, I'd honestly probably give the entire series 5 stars. I do want to reread them and then go on to the Heroes of Olympus. So yeah, I do think I'd give these ones again. These are just fun characters, fun stories, and I feel like it's a nice little intro into Greek mythology. The next middle grade is King and the Dragonflies by Casey Callender. This is about a boy who has recently lost his brother, and he also believes that his brother has been like reincarnated as a dragonfly, and it also deals with a falling out with one of his best friends, and also sexuality and parents and their grief, and there's so much in it, and such a short little book, but it packs a punch. And another heartbreaking, moving, beautiful story that yes, I would absolutely give 5 stars to. I love this book so much. I like try and recommend it as much as possible. It's an easy read, and I just feel like everyone needs to give it a try. It's beautiful. I love this one so much. Then we have Other Words from Home by Jasmine Warga, and this is about a young girl who immigrates from Syria to Cincinnati, Ohio, and her struggle with being in a new country and being in a new school and learning English, and it's all written in prose, if I remember right. Yes, it's all written in prose. It's a very easy read, and I remember really enjoying the teacher in this one because not a lot of books have great teacher representation, and a lot of the teachers are very harsh and don't understand their children and don't try to do what's best for them. But there was a teacher in this one who was just really encouraging and uplifting, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed her story. And this is another one that I feel like, along with Keegan the Dragonflies, I would recommend anyone read. It's very easy to read because it is written in prose. So yeah, this is another one that I would give 5 stars again. It was beautiful. I enjoyed this one so much. You know, middle grade just does it different. This is Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World by Ashley Herring Blake, and it's about a young girl named Ivy Aberdeen whose family's house has just been destroyed by a tornado, and just all of the uncertainty that goes on with that whole move of your home is wrecked. And she's also a middle child who often feels forgotten, and she's struggling with her sexuality as well, and it's so good. These past 3 books are just, they're absolute 5-star reads. I like group them together and recommend them to everybody. Like, you have to read this one. You have to read Other Words from Home. You have to read King and the Dragonflies. Yes, I'd give this 5 stars again. It's so good. So good. It's so sweet. I cried throughout this one as well. And last up for middle grade, we have The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Meadowstone by Jacqueline Moriarty. And this is about a girl whose parents have died, and their last request is for her to go on a trip and to give each family member that she meets along the way a gift. And she is meeting different family members that she hasn't met before, and it's in like a magical world, and it's a lot of fun. It's kooky and silly, and I flew through this in like a day. But would I give it 5 stars again? I don't think so. I have forgotten a lot of the details, but I do remember really enjoying her journey and her growth throughout it, and the way that she felt like a child. There were many times where things would happen and she would just cry, or she would not react the way that you would as an adult. Like, she was very much a child in this, and I really enjoyed that aspect to it. So it would probably be a 4-star read for me if I read it again, but it was still very, very cute. Our next category is contemporaries, and starting off we have Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. And the only thing I can tell you about this book is that it's a Grease retelling, and that is all. So I think that tells you all you need to know. I would not give this 5 stars again. With how little I remember anything about this book, it's probably more a 3-star read, but I do think I read this very early on in my booktube journey, and so I was just giving out 5 stars all the time. If I even remotely liked it and remotely liked the characters, I was like, yep, here you go. Here you go. That's a 5-star. So this one, I don't remember anything about it, so no. Next up, we have The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin Illyri Sanz. And I had read Aristotle and Dante before I read this one, and I didn't really love Aristotle and Dante. I thought it was alright, but something about this one just hit different. It had characters that I can't tell you the name of. I'm starting to remember. So it's following a young man's journey, and he has a single gay father who is just a really great parent, and that's another thing that gets me in books. I despise when parents are written to be horrible people, and it happens a lot in YA and middle grade, where the parents are just uncaring and unsupportive and don't try to get to know their child, and there's no boundaries, and the kids can go off and do whatever the heck they want to, and the parents are just like absent the entire time. I don't like that in stories because that's not my own experience. So I know other people have experienced that, so I can't say that it should never be in a book, but because I didn't have that experience, I had a good parental figure in my life. I like to see good parental figures, and this also has a grandmother figure, which was another heartbreaking aspect to the book. I don't know if I would give this a 5 stars based on recently just reading Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. I can't remember if Benjamin Illyri Sanz wrote this one with a similar prose and that very philosophical mindset, but I know that these characters I cared for significantly more, and I love the father-son dynamic. I love his dynamic with his best friend and his dynamic with his grandmother. So it could potentially be another 5-star, but I think it would probably end up being more of a 4-star read if I had to rate it again. Then we have The Hate U Give and On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This one is about a girl named Star who at the very beginning is with her childhood best friend, and he is shot and killed by the police, and it's just about her surviving after that and her life after such a tragedy and wanting to make a big difference, but her family also not wanting to put her in danger. So I love this one, and I would definitely give this one 5 stars again. It was very moving. It was heartbreaking to read, but the writing was just so well done. Oh, it's so windy outside. Oh my goodness. Same with On the Come Up. I believe I would give this one 5 stars. This is about a girl named Bree, and she wants to be a musician in her future, and it's just her following the path of trying her best to become a musician. And again, it has really great character relationships. I love the writing style of both of these books, so I do believe I'd give both of these 5 stars all over again. They're very good. I love Angie Thomas's writing, and the way that she writes characters is just, it's so good. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the only 5-star read of the 3 books that I have read by her. I enjoyed Daisy Jones and the Six, and I really enjoyed Malibu Rising. That one was almost a 5-star read, but this one was just so good. I never loved Evelyn Hugo as a character. I felt like some of the decisions she made were terrible, but I understood. I feel like I understood her motivations and the things that she did, and even though she made god-awful choices sometimes, it all made sense, and I just love how everything comes together at the end as well. I love the writing style so much, and yeah, I would absolutely give this one 5 stars again. It was just a very moving story. I was emotionally invested. I was angry. I was sad. I was happy. It was a good one. I highly recommend reading this one if you have not already. Then we have Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Kahoram, and this one I read in about a day, and I think I cried the entire way through. So this is about his name is in the title, I just went to look for his name. It's about a boy named Darius, and he suffers from severe depression, and he doesn't really feel like he fits in at school, and he's kind of having a bit of a hard time dealing with his father because his dad just tells him to like stand up for himself and like get out there and try harder to make friends with people. And so he has a pretty strained relationship with his family, but one of his grandparents is very ill, so they have to go to Iran to stay with family for a little while so that they could have their final goodbye with that grandparent. And while Darius is there, he meets another boy and like finally gains his first friendship, and there's struggles with that, and it's him just struggling through his mental health and finding a first friend. It's also him struggling with his sexuality and reconnecting with this family member who is ill and connecting with his parents, and it has so much packed into it, and I was just so emotionally invested in this family and these characters, and yeah, 5 stars for sure. Absolutely, without a doubt, I would give this 5 stars again. Read it. Please read it. It's getting darker and darker. It's gonna rain so hard, I think. Or it's just gonna be very dusty outside. The next category is romance, like fantasy romance, and we're gonna start with Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And I don't think I remember very much about it. I know it's about the son of the President of the United States and a prince from England who are kind of enemies. They don't really get along because of something that happened in their past, but then they start to fall in love. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't think this was a 5-star read while I was reading it, but because so many people loved it, I felt like I missed something in it and ended up giving it 5 stars just because everyone else did. But I'm struggling to even remember the details of it. I think I remember liking that they didn't really have a big like 3rd act conflict, and that is something that I always look for in a romance. It's just really refreshing when one is not there, or there's not like a huge drama that is out of left field. So it had some pros, but I don't remember their relationship very much at all. So I don't think I would give this 5 stars. It would probably end up being a 4-star if I'm being completely honest. I don't think I actually wanted to give it 5 stars. I didn't want to disappoint. In a similar fashion, we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I enjoyed book 2 way more than I enjoyed book 1. I didn't necessarily love Chloe and Red's interaction sometimes, but I liked that this one had a character with chronic illness and chronic pain, and I liked seeing how Red was like more soft for Chloe than anybody else. But I don't know, I think book 2 is way better. I think everyone is in agreement with that, where Dani Brown is way better. But this is about a girl named Chloe Brown who just kind of wants to get out and have a life, and she kind of makes a bucket list for the things that she wants to do, and her landlord ends up being the one who has to help her with it. And it was good, but I think this one is more of a 4-star read, and for whatever reason I didn't give book 2 a 5-star when I should have. Should I make a video of the books I should have given 5 stars? I think that would be kind of interesting to see the books that, like, looking back, I probably should have given 5 stars because I still think about them and those characters. We then have Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is about a woman who has recently lost her dad, and it's kind of making her struggle with writing some stories that she has to write. So she goes to stay at the lake house that she has inherited from her father, and the neighbor next door is actually like her rival from college who is also an author. So they swap writing styles to try and both get out of their writing slumps. And the grief in this was so real. I had just been going through my own grief as well, and I think that's what I connected to the most with this. I don't remember enjoying the couple as much as I enjoyed the other plot lines and everything else that was involved in this. And to be completely honest, I thought I gave this 4 stars, but when I was looking up this list it was 5 stars. So I don't think I would give this one 5 stars again, but I did really enjoy it for everything except for the romance. People We Meet on Vacation I also read right after I read Beach Read. I have a vlog on reading both of these, and I loved this one so much, and I think it's just because the main trope is friends to lovers, and that gets me. I am not a big enemies to lovers fan. I've learned that I can appreciate it at some points, but friends to lovers is my bread and butter. And this one is about 2 people who every summer go on a vacation together, and after one summer goes awry, they lose contact. But is her name Poppy? Yeah. But Poppy, our main character, needs one more trip with him, so she reaches out and they decide to go on like one more trip together, and it's finding out like what happened between them and why they had such a big falling out. I will say that reason that they end up having a huge falling out was pretty lackluster, but I enjoyed these characters together and how much they cared for each other, and I just find that friends to lovers trope really gets me. I think it's just knowing that there's 2 characters that like truly understand each other. It's just so nice to read, so nice to read. So I probably would give this one 5 stars again because I love that trope so much, but it could also be like a 4.5 star, you know? But you can see all my thoughts in my vlog if you want to. The next book is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite, and this one is about 2 women, one who is a scientist and the other woman was married to a scientist. The widowed woman needs the younger woman, Lucy, needs to translate something that Catherine's deceased husband was working on, and them forming a relationship. And I just love this one so much. I'm struggling to remember all of the details, but I just remember their dynamic being so healthy. That's what I remember the most, was that these 2 were very healthy, and the problems that arose made sense to these characters, and nothing came out of left field, which is my least favorite, like I've already said. But yeah, I think if I reread this one, which I feel like this is one that I want to reread someday, I would give this 5 stars. I really enjoyed their dynamic together and how much they cared about each other's goals and dreams, and how I just kind of wanted to work together to get towards them. Good stuff. This was good stuff. I want to read the other books in this series. I don't know if it's a series, you know, like another character in the book has another book and they're all connected. You know, is that a series still? Or is that just like a world? I don't know. Moving on. Yes, I'd give this 5 stars. Yes, I gave it 5 stars. It was a good one, okay? It's way better than book 1. This is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Everyone has read it. It follows A Court of Thorns and Roses, which was okay. I thought that book was just perfectly okay. I had a good time. It was nice to finally get to a series that I had heard so many people talk about, and I read this, I vlogged it, I had a good time. Okay, I am a Rhysand girly, I can't help it, but his chapter, I think it's chapter 54, when he explains everything and we get the background for everything. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, I felt all of the feelings, okay? It's good, it's fun, it's cheesy, it's predictable, but I loved it. So yes, I am a fan of this series. I would give this one 5 stars again, but the other ones were all fine. I think they were like 3 to 4 star reads just because I had a good time. I enjoy this type of story. I enjoy the writing style enough, and I really like these characters. I probably should have given A Court of Silver Flames 5 stars because I did like that one too. It's good, okay? Okay, I threw this one in the sci-fi and fantasy category because I don't know where else to put it, but it's Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a book that I read right at the start of quarantine, which might not have been the best time to read it, but it was also kind of the best time to read it because it felt very, very atmospheric and a little bit spookier because of that. But this one is about a pandemic that wipes out like 99% of the population, and it's following different characters during the time of the outbreak as well as in the future after everybody is dead pretty much, and just what life looks like post-pandemic. And it also has a traveling Shakespeare theater group, and the narrative is told in past and present, and it's just very moving. I remember just being heartbroken by so many parts of it and so invested in these characters. And there are characters that you read that don't make it, and you watch them go through their struggles and you watch them to the end. And there are cheesy parts of it that I didn't enjoy very much, but there was just something so deep in this, and I want to reread it, and I don't know if I would give it 5 stars again, but I take that back. I think I would, because there are so many things in this that just stick with me to this day. There is a paragraph towards the end that I will literally pull this book off the shelf and just reread this part and cry and cry and cry. I think it's just a lot of what would you do in this situation and how would you feel if this happened to you is what I got the most out of. And I like books like that that make you feel like you're in it and make you question what you would do and what your thoughts would be. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I really want to read The Glass Hotel and The Sea of Tranquility because I kind of heard that all 3 books are a little bit connected in The Sea of Tranquility. So yeah, I think I'd give this one 5 stars. I talk about it all the time. I think about it all the time. It's a good book. Then we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a sci-fi fantasy, and it is about a woman who one day she comes home to find that her husband has beaten and murdered her son and has kidnapped their daughter, and she sets out to go and get her daughter back. And in this world we find out there are these events called seasons, which are basically apocalypse that happen every so often, and there's a magic system that's based on the earth and stone, and we're following different characters who have these magical properties, and there's different point of views that we're following, and I don't know how to explain it very well. There are other people who can explain this much more concisely than I can explain it, but it is so good. I feel like I've said this before, but it's a masterpiece of a book. It's just the way everything wraps up in this one and comes together just blew me away. It blew my mind. I had barely started to predict it, and then the next page everything was revealed, and it was so good. I cried my way through this. This one has very heavy and deep and dark topics, but it was so good. Yeah, I'd give this one 5 stars again. I definitely would. I really enjoyed this one. Then we have the Mistborn trilogy, which I have just recently read. I've talked about already like 100 times. This series was amazing. I would absolutely give it 5 stars all again. And I would do anything to read this series for the first time all again because it is that good. It is by Brandon Sanderson, if I haven't already said that, but it's about this world in which people can ingest metals, and if you can ingest one, you earn a certain property, and it's like a magical ability, and you are called a misting. But if you can ingest all of the metals and pull all of those properties and powers, you are called a mistborn. And we follow a group of mistings and mistborns who are basically just trying to overthrow their government because it has been ruled by a dark lord for 1,000 years. And that's all I want to say about it, because I went in knowing literally nothing besides that the magic power was based on metals, and I got so much out of this series. If you can avoid spoilers, do everything you can to avoid spoilers and then read this all, because it's so good and I will rave about it forever. Alright, 2 more categories to go. It is like very dark and stormy out. You can see the major lighting changes we have going on here. I'm sorry, I hope it's still okay. Young adult fantasy is next, and we start off with The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I read this book as my very first book after not reading for about 6 or 7 years, and I loved it. It had every single trope that I love in a book. It's historical romance, it's male-male romance, it's friends to lovers, and I adored it. I had such a great time. I also read the little novella, The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky. I gave it 5 stars, but this is definitely more like a 3 to 4 star read. So this one, I would not rate 5 stars again. This is just like 100 pages of extra content on the 2 characters in this book. But this one, I probably would give it 5 stars. But Mackenzie Lee, I do know that she is a bit of a problematic author, so because of that, I'd probably drop it down to 4 stars. But I did enjoy it, and I feel bad saying that because I know she is problematic, but yeah. I'm just letting you know, I did give this 5 stars. Then we have A Curse So Dark and Lonely and A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer. And this was kind of like my first introduction back into like a fantasy series. And I really enjoyed the writing style. I thought it was very funny. I enjoyed these characters. And I do think I would give these both 5 stars again. This one could be a 4-star read if I were to go back and reread it. And this one, I do think I would give it 5 stars again because I enjoyed the characters that I've followed more than I enjoyed these characters, and I really did enjoy these ones. So I do feel like this still reflects my reading. I liked the characters. I thought it was funny. I felt like the stakes were high enough in this series, but this is basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and without giving spoilers away, this has a few characters that we follow from book 1 that are in book 2. And I like them more. But book 3 ended up not being my favorite. There are some characters I ended up not liking very much by the end, but first 2 were good. Then we have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I even think I did a reading vlog reading this one with Nat, and I loved this one. It's following a trans male character whose family doesn't believe that he can be a real brujo, and he wants to prove it so badly, so he ends up summoning a ghost of another boy from his high school, and it's them trying to figure out what happened to this boy, as well as following our brujo's challenges in becoming a real brujo and everything that he has to do. And I had a really good time with this one. I cried my way through this one. I cry all the time though, so like not shocking. But I just felt emotionally invested in these characters, and even though parts of the plot were very predictable, it was still a really good time. I do think if I read this one again, I would give it 5 stars, and I heard recently that there is going to be a second book in this series following them doing other shenanigans and solving other mysteries, so I'm really eager to read that one and see if I like it, because I did end up DNFing Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas, so I want to see if I do mesh with the writing style, or if this one was just like a one-off sort of 5-star. Is this the first TJ Klune I've brought up? It can't be. It must be. This is The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune, and this is following a young boy named Nick who has ADHD, who writes fan fiction about Extraordinaries, which are the real-life superheroes in their world, and he is a bit of a mess, and he ends up getting entangled with these real-life Extraordinaries in his world, and it is silly and chaotic and so funny. The audiobook to this as well is hilarious, but I've read this book 3 times and I've given it 5 stars every single time. I would give this 5 stars again because I've given it 5 stars 3 times. We then have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This follows a young girl named Spencer who has grown up being deemed the coward's daughter because her father was a pilot in their military and ended up turning on his fellow pilots, and he had to be shot down. And Spencer has grown up with that weighing over her, and she wants to be a pilot and prove that her family is not cowards. And it's following her journey and her struggles in becoming a pilot and how mistreated she is in this society. And it's so fun. It's so good. There's so much in it, so much action in it. And I really, really, really loved this book so much. I've read it twice now and I loved it both times just as much. My camera is dying. Let me go change that. Okay, we're back with a new battery. Last up in the young adult fantasy category is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. This is following a group of 6 young adults who live in a world where there is magic, and they are going on a heist to basically get very, very rich. And I feel like I could do a much better job explaining this, but it is following the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which, not my favorite, but I do think that it helps make this world make so much more sense if you do read the trilogy. But I've read this duology twice and I've given it 5 stars both times. I plan to read this book over and over and over again. I love these characters and their dynamics, and I don't know what else to say about these 2 books besides they are so much fun, and I wish I could live in this world, but at the same time I don't really want to because I don't think I would survive it. But I love these characters, and Kaz is such a good character. I love him and Inej and Nina. Matthias is alright. I don't know what I was saying, my grandpa just walked in, but yeah. I love these. I would give them 5 stars all over again. They're so good. And our final category is my TJ Klune category. Let's start off with Wolfsong. This is the first book that I read by TJ Klune, and it is following a man named Ox from the time he is 12 years old until he is like 20 something years old. And his father basically told him that he's not going to amount to much in his life and that he's going to get a lot of crap. And so Ox is just very down on himself, doesn't have a lot of friends. He has his mom, he has his boss, co-worker, friend, pseudo-parent person Gordo, and his other co-workers they're just kind of the only people in his life. And he lives in a small town and is just kind of like living his life until one day the Bennett family moves in and they happen to be werewolves, and Ox gets entangled in their family, and it's following him from 12 years old up until he's 20 and how these werewolves impact his life. And it's so much deeper than that. It is so much more than that. And TJ Klune just does my favorite characters ever. I'm rereading this book currently and I love it even more the second time around. It's just heartfelt and tragic, and there is such big losses in this first book that are so hard to read, but these characters are beautiful, and I don't know what more to say about this book. It's absolutely a 5-star read. It will forever be a 5-star read. It is one of my favorite books of all time. The second TJ Klune book is The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I read the day after I read Wolfsong, and the writing style could not be any more different. But this book is also one of my favorite books of all time. This is following a man named Linus who is just kind of living an average life. He's just kind of existing in his world, and he has dreams of bigger and brighter futures ahead. And one day he is sent out to an orphanage to assess the situation and check to see if these children are going to bring upon the end of the world, because they are all children with very extreme powers. One is the son of Satan, one is a magic garden gnome, one is a wyvern, one is a blob of slime that they don't know what his species is. But these characters are just so sweet, so beautiful, and it's just about like found family and accepting your place and being brave, and I love this book. So it is a warm hug. It is a warm hug in a book. I forced everybody I know to read this book. My mom even read it and she said it was beautiful and sweet, and it's just so good. It's so happy and cheerful, and I really love it. I really love it. So yeah, it's a 5-star read. I've also read this one 2 or 3 times. It's so sweet though. It's just like one that lifts you up when you're down. Next up, I gave Brother Song 5 stars. This is the 4th book in the Green Creek series, which starts with Wolfsong. It's followed by Raven Song and then Heartsong, and this is the conclusion to the series. I don't know why I didn't give book 2 or 3 5 stars, because looking back, I can't stop thinking about either of those books. So when I slowly work my way back through them all, I think they'll all end up being 5 stars, especially this one as well. It wraps everything up in a nice, neat little bow for the most part, and it's just so moving to be able to stick with characters from the time they're, what, 12 years old until they're in like their mid to late 30s, and everything that they experience together and the ways that every single character grows and changes, and how everybody just has such a deep bond. I love this series for the characters and for their relationships, and sometimes the plot is not my favorite and it's a little slow to read and slow moving, but I could read these characters literally just sitting on their bed, reading a book, eating soup, brushing their teeth, putting on their shoes. Like, I don't care what these characters do, I just love them so much. So yes, this series is a 5-star read for me. Are we surprised? This is TJ Klune. Like, why did I save this category for last? Because we're just gonna keep going on with this series. Is another one by TJ Klune. It starts with The Lightning Struck Heart, followed by A Destiny of Dragon, The Consumption of Magic, and A Wish Upon the Stars. This is the Tales from Verania series, and it follows a man named Sam, who is a young wizard, and he wants to be the greatest wizard of all time before anybody else ever has. And his task in life is also going to be the wizard to the king, kind of like an advisor to the king. And he doesn't quite get along with the prince at the beginning because the man that Sam has a crush on is engaged to the prince. And one day the prince gets kidnapped by a dragon, and Sam, the man he's in love with, and his 2 best friends have to go and save the prince. And it's just following that journey in book 1 and all of the shenanigans that they get up to. This is another one with great characters and character relationships. It's hilarious. There is crude humor. This is definitely an adult series. I would never recommend this to a child ever. It has heartbreak, and it has magic, and it has silliness, and sometimes it's grating how terrible these jokes are, but I love these characters so much. And I think I read this book at one of the hardest points of my life, and it was just kind of a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel for me sometimes. I don't know if I would give this 5 stars had I not been in such a dark place when I was reading them, because of how much hope and happiness this gave me. And I did read this with one of my friends at the time, and he had really enjoyed it too, so having somebody to talk to about the series and gush over it with, I think everything around these books heightened my experience with it. So if I did reread it, I think I would give it 5 stars based on my memories of it and how it made me feel. I think now that I've read like 20 so TJ Klune books, there are some tropes and dynamics that have gotten a little old to me, but yeah, I do think I would give this 5 stars again based on the nostalgia, even though I read it like last year. It's just one of those books that's going to resonate with me for a very long time, and these characters are hilarious, and I really need to continue on with the series. There's 2 books in this series after this that I haven't read yet. Like, what am I waiting for? We then have The Bones Beneath My Skin, and this one was a surprise for me. This one I had not heard anybody reading, and I picked it up kind of on a whim because I love this cover. I love any blues and purples and space themed covers, so I read it and it was so good. It is set in, I believe, the same world as Green Creek, and it is also set in the same world as one of his other books called Into This River I Drown, and that's something I really enjoy, that like there's kind of nods in a lot of his older indie books where they're all connected maybe, but it's not quite confirmed. But this one is following a man named Nate who has just kind of been going through it. So he goes up to stay in a cabin that his parents owned, and when he is there he runs into a man named Alex and a young girl who calls herself Artemis Darth Vader, and there's something a little strange about those two, and Nate gets involved in it. And I don't want to say more than that, but it's a really good time. It is a standalone. I feel like this is a really good place to start if you want to get into a lot of TJ Klune's indie works, because it's a standalone, but it does show like his character dynamics and character growth and how well he does those. I do think that there could be a little bit more for relationship building in this one, but again, I was sobbing by the end of this because TJ Klune brings out all of my emotions and he owes me therapy for sure. But this one was one of my bigger surprises from TJ Klune because I didn't expect to love it as much as I do, but it was so good. And finally, on this list, we have Under the Whispering Door, which, again, he owes me so much therapy. This was another one that I had read not too long after losing my grandma, so I have an emotional connection to this one because I could relate to a lot of the grief in this. But basically, this one is about a man who has just recently died, and he is taken to a tea house where it is also the door to the other world, but this man does not want to be dead, so he decides to not cross over through the door and go on into the afterlife. And it's him and the owner of this tea shop getting to know each other and helping other souls cross over into their afterlives. And I feel like I'm not doing this book very much justice in how I'm explaining it, but it's just about finding love after death and finding purpose after death and making the most of a really terrible situation. It has a lot of dark themes, different ways people have died, all the ways that you can think of pretty much, and how that impacts different characters, and it's heartbreaking. It's emotional. If you have lost somebody, it's probably one that's going to hit home in some ways, but I do really recommend this one. It is one of his sadder books, even though I cry over almost every single TJ Klune book, but this is one of the sadder ones. But it's not done in a dark and heavy way like some of his other books are. This still has that whimsy like The House in the Cerulean Sea, but it covers way darker topics. So I really enjoyed this one, and yes, I would also give this one 5 stars again because I am just a sucker for TJ Klune books. I should just get like #1 fan tattooed on me with TJ Klune's face or something at this point, because yeah, that's all I talk about. It's my favorite. I don't know what else to say. It is now basically pitch black outside. My bed is covered with books, and what have we learned? I think I stand by most of my ratings. Maybe contemporaries are ones that I don't know my own taste on still, especially young adult. I don't think I am loving young adult as much, so I feel like I would reevaluate some of those. But for the most part, yeah, I stand by most of my 5-star ratings. So I guess this is just a really massive and long recommendation video. So everything that I have rated 5 stars, yes, I recommend. If you would like to add those to your wish list, go ahead and do that because you have my stamp of approval. I guess I would just like to know if you have made it this far in the video. So if you have, go ahead and leave me is there a teacup emoji? Let's leave a teacup emoji to let me know. And if there are any books that you would like me to reread and reevaluate my 5-star rating, let me know in the comments which those ones are. I think that's all I have for this video. If you would like to chat with me more about books, I have my Instagram and Discord linked below. And yeah, I'm tired of filming. It's very hot. I need to eat dinner. So I'm gonna wrap this up right now, and I will see you in my next video, which should be out on Friday. Alright, see you later. Bye!